told you the story of Albertans versus rats, dentists versus society. And now it's time for another unlikely battle in weird Canadian history with strange, which is apparently becoming a segment on this channel. The Toronto Clown Riots. And I'm not talking about DashCon 2. Though, insanely, the original DashCon and the Clown Riots do share the same dates, just separated by 159 years. So that's a crazy fun fact. You guys are gonna love this one. You're gonna love this one. But first, before we get into it, a word from this video's sponsor, Helix. It's time to get cozy for the winter season. And if your mattress sucks, well, that just won't do now, will it? Helix Sleep makes premium mattresses customized to fit your needs and conveniently shipped straight to your door. Everyone's different, everyone sleeps differently, which is why Helix's sleep quiz is designed to match you with your perfect mattress based on your body type and sleep preferences. If you sleep with a partner, you can take the quiz together to find something that's the perfect compromise for the two of you. Based on my results, Helix matched me with their Twilight Luxe mattress, which is this beautiful mattress that you see before your eyes right here. It is their firmest mattress. I do tend to prefer firmer mattresses because of the scoliosis demons that possess my spine. It's very easy for me to mess up my day if I do not sleep on a good surface. Helix has been reviewed against hundreds of competitors and is the most awarded. The Helix Midnight Luxe has been ranked best overall mattress according to both Forbes and Wired. The Helix lineup offers 20 unique mattresses to choose from, as well as a line of mattress toppers that are designed to be used on non-Helix mattresses. So if you're looking to improve your old mattress, these are an excellent option. They've got the premium mattress topper for sleepers looking for added pressure relief, the Ergo Align mattress topper, which has 3 support zones to optimize spinal alignment, the dual comfort mattress topper, which is designed for couples with different preferences. I have had my Helix mattress for about almost 4 years now, which is crazy. I still love it. Myself, my partner, our 2 beautiful baby Binguses are all sleeping great on it. If it makes you nervous, you make me nervous, baby boy. If it makes you nervous to buy a mattress you haven't tried out in person, don't worry, because Helix offers seamless returns and exchanges. You get a 120-night sleep trial. You can sleep on this baby for 120 nights before you decide if you really love it. There's also a lifetime warranty, there are financing options, and flexible payment plans. I really like my Helix mattress, so if you're in the market for a new bed, go check out Helix. Go to helix.com/strangeeons or scan the QR code on screen to take advantage of their extended New Year's sale and get 20% off. And now, I return you to your regularly scheduled content. Let's take our time machine back to the year 1855. This is the city of Toronto. The earliest surviving photographs of the city were taken in 1856, which is 1 year after today's tale takes place, so they were a really good window into what the city looked like then. Mud streets, wooden sidewalks, air choked by coal smoke. The city had been founded only about 60 years ago at this point. There were people alive, older than the city of Toronto. The population? 40,000. But it was growing fast, with immigrants from England, Scotland, and Ireland. This right here is Front Street, which is called that because it used to be the waterfront. It's not anymore, because they extended the city outwards into the lake by a few blocks in this whole massive infrastructure project that included the building of the CN Tower. It seems like a bonkers thing to do, but I don't know, it's like they're kind of doing it again right now, so like, I don't know, they have their reasons or whatever. They just keep extending this fucking city. This pointy guy right here in all of the old photographs is St. James Cathedral. This here is St. Lawrence Hall, home to the St. Lawrence Market on the ground floor, and City Hall on the upper floors. This is the Fair Green, which is like an open grassy field where a lot of outdoor events were hosted, and this all appears very quaint and simple compared to the modern metropolis that we live in today. But do not be fooled, okay? Toronto of 1855 was a pretty rough place to live, with popular vices accessible around every corner. The city had hundreds of taverns, beer shops, and of course, many brothels, which operated pretty freely despite technically being illegal or whatever, which brings us to our final landmark in this tale, okay? A brothel at King and John, somewhere around like vaguely here, owned by one Mary Ann Armstrong. Armstrong was apparently quite the businesswoman as the owner of a number of brothels throughout the city. We know this because there are records of her being frequently arrested, fined, and easily able to pay the fines and going on with her business. And that was all fine and good with everyone because probably nobody really wanted her business to be shut down. The police were probably her customers too. So I think this kind of sets the scene a little bit. I think kind of gives us a taste of the way that in a very Wild West sort of fashion, law enforcement in 1855 Toronto could be a little bit. Now our story officially begins. On July 12th, 1855. This is the day of the Orange Parade. The Orange Parade is like the Protestant Pride Parade, basically. It's celebrated on the anniversary of William of Orange's victory over the Catholic King James II in 1690, and it was a big deal in 19th century Toronto. There was this thing called the Orange Order, which was like, it was like a boys' club, like the Masonic Lodge, or however many other lodges and clubs existed at the time, but for Protestant men. And the Orange Order was extremely powerful in Toronto. Pretty much everyone in power in the city, including council officials, police, firemen, mayors, were all part of the Orange Order, and they made sure that it stayed that way, that all of the important positions went to people who were part of their special little club and who looked out for each other's interests, you know? Toronto in general was extremely orange, which makes sense, because America had had this whole revolution and kicked out the British, whereas Canada was still on good terms with the British. So if you loved being Protestant and British, you were probably going to come to Canada and have parades about how awesome it is to be Protestant and how much the Catholics can suck. Meanwhile, also on July 12th, a circus comes to town. SB House's Star Troupe Menagerie and Circus arrives in Toronto. They're an American traveling circus, boasting exotic animals, trick equestrian riders, acrobats, and of course, clowns. They set up their grand tents on the fair green. Now, this circus was a decently sized and popular one at the time, so it was a pretty big deal for them to be coming to a growing city like Toronto. July 12th was an all-around, absolutely action-packed day. Now, after a successful day of performances, a group of clowns from the circus headed out on the town to enjoy some of the city's nightly offerings. Now, this might be a comical image to those of us in the 21st century, but I assure you we are not dealing with some, like, colorful children's birthday party clowns here, okay? These were some scary clowns. These were some tough clowns, okay? Life in a traveling circus was not easy. These clowns would be doing a lot of hard labor, transporting and setting up their shows. They were dealing with drunken and unruly crowds on a regular basis. It honestly wasn't uncommon at the time for fights to break out at a circus, and most performers were not strangers to violence. So these clowns come across the fine establishment of one Marianne Armstrong, the brothel around King and John Street, and I assume expect to have a fun night out there. But these clowns, oh, these clowns, they take a swift disliking to another cohort of men that they find inside this fine establishment. A group of volunteer firefighters with the Hook and Ladder Company. No one is exactly sure how the fight began, or how the fight escalated into a physical brawl, but soon enough, my friends, we've got clowns and firefighters drunkenly fist-fighting in this brothel. We have the disagreeable duty this morning of announcing another serious riot in the city. A large traveling circus and menagerie advertised in the bills as SB Houses came into the city on the 12th and gave the usual performances in the afternoon and evening without any disturbance. At night, however, some of the men employed in the circus, who are in general, we may remark, a very dissolute set of men, got into a row with several persons, residents of the city, in a house of ill fame on King Street. The fight was a severe one, but the circus men had the best of it. That's right, the clowns win. Two of the volunteer firefighters, named Fawcett and Fraser, a cobbler and a carpenter, are so badly injured as to require medical attention. Two upstanding citizens, tax-paying upstanding Orangemen, pummeled by clowns? American clowns? This would not stand. In an interview, Toronto historian Adam Bunch explained, by picking a fight with these firefighters, the clowns were kind of picking a fight with the whole power structure of Toronto. Oopsie! That's an oopsie. Apparently, one particularly bloodthirsty clown by the name of Myers was at fault for severely injuring the two men who needed medical attention. So, the police go down to the circus, looking for the killer clown named Myers. No luck. Apparently he's already fled to Brampton, which is punishment enough. So police leave. But hold on there. Just one moment. I bet you think you know something about what a firefighter is. But much like clowning, the profession of firefighting was really different in 1855. There was no publicly funded fire service like there is today, at least in Toronto. The fire brigade was made up instead of many independent companies, staffed by volunteers, who also had other jobs during the day. And these organizations, these volunteer firefighting organizations, tended to be drinking clubs just as much as they were the fire service. And also, they were in competition with each other, which could be bad. Just a week before the circus riot, there had been a fire on Church Street. The Hook and Ladder Company, whose members would also fight the clowns in the brothel a week later, they arrived at this fire on Church Street at the same time as a competing company, and the two got into a street brawl instead of putting out the fire. The police eventually showed up to try and, break up this fight, at which point the firefighting companies turned on them and beat up the cops together, which is, kind of Heartwarming. Am I feeling warm and fuzzy, or is that just the heat of the building you're all letting burn down right now? Like I explained before, the cops, the firefighters, they're all members of the Orange Order. So everyone here is Orange Men. This is Orange Men on Orange Men violence. So even though they typically entertained themselves by terrorizing the Irish Catholic population, it shows that exceptions could be made. Everyone drank so much and loved to punch each other so much, and there was really not a lot to do in 1855. The list of riots in Toronto around that time is comical unto itself. People would take any opportunity, apparently, to riot, especially the men of the Hook and Ladder Company. And now these American clowns had crossed the line. These American clowns had come into their city and messed with them on the day of the Orange Parade, no less. It was war on the clowns. The firefighters spent the next day, July 13th, rallying support for their cause and planning their attack. Meanwhile, the circus performances were proceeding as normal, until around 9 p.m. Then, the crowd surrounding the tent suddenly began to take the shape of an angry mob. People started throwing rocks, trying to manually pull down the circus tent or cut the cords holding it up. One member of the Hook and Ladder Company named Joseph Bird was among the crowd, and according to the police chief's account of events, a member of the circus struck him over the head with an iron bar in retaliation. According to another, members of the circus were simply hurling items back at the crowd who were hurling rocks at them, and Bird was struck in the head simply by coincidence. Everyone was throwing things at each other. Regardless, this injury really riles up the crowd. I saw Bird struck and knocked down by a showman. I do not know Mr. Bird, but when he was struck, several persons cried out, "Bird is killed!" He was struck by one of the men who belonged to the circus. I mean, he was fine. It sounds like he was knocked out. He was taken away to get medical attention, but he was very much fine after that. I saw the ticket wagon being pushed over, saw a crowd pushing towards the tent. I told the circus men to look out, for I thought they would be attacked. I saw Mr. Charlton, who I thought would do all he could to suppress the riot, and I said, "This is bad work." He said, "Damn the Yankees. We'll show them what can be done in Toronto." The mob overturns the ticket wagon and sets it on fire. The fire bells are rung, and who is called to the scene but the Hook and Ladder Company? But they're not here to put out the fire, no. Why would the fire department do that? They're obviously here to set more things on fire. The Hook and Ladder carriage of the fire department was brought rapidly onto the ground, and the hooks immediately pulled down the tent. After the tent is dragged down, it is then set on fire, and basically becomes like this massive bonfire with members of the crowd throwing more items from the circus onto it. The circus men were forced to flee for their lives, some of them even taking refuge in the water. Their trunks were broken open and the contents scattered, burnt, and torn. Funny enough, apparently one of the original firemen injured in the brothel wasn't supportive of this egregious destruction of property. Heard Fraser observing that none of these destroying the tent paid any taxes. And while uttering this expression, a person said, "Damn you, shut up your mouth!" striking him, at the moment, on the forehead. The police were there, by the way. The police were there the whole time. A whole 12 of them were deployed to this scene. The police did attempt to make a few arrests, but every time the crowd would free that person, the police would grab someone and the crowd would just drag them back. Like, it was futile. When they grabbed the person responsible for setting the tent on fire, the crowd gathered around and demanded us to let him go. And then we heard them call for axes. So he was let go. Members of the crowd were armed with guns and with axes, whereas police didn't carry guns at this point. All they had was batons. They had sticks at the guns and axes fight. The mayor hears of this kerfuffle and decides to walk on over from City Hall down to the Fair Green himself, like the city's disappointed father, to see what's going on. As he approaches, he clearly sees police officers standing around on the sidewalk watching this happen, and he decides that he's going to have to take matters into his own hands. The next thing I recollect was hearing a cry of, "We've got one of them!" By that time, the tent was nearly all down. I ran around to where the shouts came from and found a number of the crowd pulling a man from under the canvas. I pushed my way through, and just as I got near the man, I found one of the crowd with an axe in his hand, which I took from him. There were shouts of, "Kill him! Hit him on the head!" and a number of cries of that kind. And being apprehensive the man would lose his life, I thought it advisable to take him into custody myself. McCaffrey, who was near me, got hold of one arm, and I got hold of the other, and between us we took him out and put him into a cab, which happened to be standing on the road, and sent him off, the crowd following and calling out to hit him and strike him, but none of them touched him. There was a cry raised then to throw the other wagons, in which the animals were, over the bank. I endeavored to reason with the crowd, telling them that if they set fire to them, the animals would make their escape, and some terrible accident would happen. At last, I got on top of one of the wagons. The crowd all gathered round, and I spoke to them for a few minutes, endeavored to point out the folly of what they had been doing, and begged they would at once disperse and go home. This seemed to have the desired effect, for they began almost immediately after to break up, and before very long, the greater part of them had left the ground. Thanks to this heroism on the part of the mayor, the riot does finally begin to dissipate. He also calls in the military to help, but by the time they arrive, it's kind of finished anyway. The mayor and the military stay on site until around 3 a.m. as the circus performers are presumably gathering up their remaining belongings and getting ready to get the hell out of here. Somehow, miraculously, no one was killed. So that's good, at least. That's a silver lining to this story. In the aftermath, the 12 police officers who were there strangely could not seem to identify any of the rioters, despite the fact that they were there, watching it happen. The entire time. The mayor said it was astonishing that though there were 12 constables present, none of them appeared to know the parties connected with the affair. Their refusal to identify the men responsible for destroying the circus seemed to indicate that their uselessness to stop the riot might also have been a calculated choice. When confronted by the mayor about this, Police Chief Samuel Sherwood, he completely agreed that all of his officers were incompetent idiots who couldn't follow his orders. Oh my god, do you see what I have to deal with here? Nobody really bought that. All of the officers present, when interviewed, said that they were never given clear orders by Sherwood. One of them had been a cop for about a week at that point and had received zero formal training. You recollect, after the tent was down and set fire to, an attempt was made to place one of the large wagons on the burning embers. Were any of your policemen then on duty where you had stationed them? There was a great crowd around the wagon. Some of them might have been there. Were they rendering you any particular assistance? They were not with me at that time. The reason I asked was because on my arrival on the grounds, I found a lot of the policemen standing on the road. That was afterwards. There were some policemen standing on the road just as I arrived. I can hear the gritted teeth through this 150-year-old newspaper. Do you believe that the police really are unable to identify any of those parties? That is a hard question. No, it's not, sir! So was this the police and the firefighters putting aside their differences, last week's riot where they all beat each other up during the fire on Church Street, putting aside those differences and teaming up against the outsiders as Orangemen? Yes! Okay, yes. But I think a lot of that stems from fear as opposed to camaraderie. The police knew they were gonna get hurt if they fought the Hook and Ladder Company again. They might have even feared retaliation if they were to identify them. That new cop that I mentioned, the guy who had been a cop for about a week when this riot happened, he said he overheard one rioter threatening another officer that the police would get beaten if they interfered. And when he naively suggested that they should probably call in backup then, McCaffrey turned around and said to me, "Hold your tongue. You are too young yet on the force to understand what to do." Interesting. So the police were absolutely useless. There was a lengthy investigation into why exactly this was. The idea of giving them guns, though, was very quickly shut down. I think you should be very cautious about putting arms into the hands of your policemen. I would not support the idea of giving arms to our present policemen. Jesus. The mayor was not having it. The newspaper articles, scathing. The need for police reform was just so glaringly obvious to everyone. A circus company is not generally composed of the most respectable men in the world. Rather the contrary. But this company was licensed to perform in Toronto, having paid the customary fees, and so far as can be learned, they neither by word nor deed gave just cause to the offense of any resident. The first row on Thursday evening was provoked, as we are credibly informed, by the townsmen who engaged in it. Be that as it may, the premeditated and violent attack of a large number of residents upon a company of strangers, and the wanton destruction of their property because, supposing at the very worst, one of them had a difficulty with the townsmen, we say such an attack is a disgrace to the city and all connected with it. The fact that not a single arrest was made among the rioters, and the police officers on duty when interrogated alleged that they could not identify any individual as being engaged in the violence which passed under their eyes for hours, these are incidents of the most disgraceful character. It would really appear that the city is at the mercy of a band of ruffians, who may kill, burn, and destroy as they please, and that the law is perfectly powerless either to prevent or punish their misdeeds. The message was clear. Members of the Orange Order were above the law. The police refused to prosecute them. So the circus riot ends up being this kind of wacky snapshot of history that at first it sounds quite funny, but it actually ends up being like a really interesting window into how the city functioned at that time. A handful of arrests were eventually made of people who played a key role in instigating the riot. I think only one person was ever actually prosecuted for it after 4 more years, which is not nearly fast enough. And there were more cover-ups by the police in that 4 years. City Council did eventually call for complete reform to the police force. They fired every single police officer and rehired the force from scratch. And yeah, that did involve rehiring a lot of the previous guys. And the Orange Order still remained extremely powerful in Toronto for like another 100 years after that. So ultimately, they had a lot of really interesting conversations about the problems with the city. Did the reforms they made really fix that in a huge way? But hey, you know, at least that Sherwood idiot got fired permanently. And that's the story of the Toronto clown riots, my friends. So thank you once again for letting me info dump about some random rabbit hole that I went down this week. It has been an honor, and I will see you next time on Strange.